From my point of view, copper is the most important mineral in the world because without copper, we cannot deliver and utilize energy. To me, copper is the new gold. I think the United States is beginning to see that security of supply of critical minerals is important. And that's come out of the trade wars over the past few years. And I think we'll continue to see a push in that direction. You know, the push to have security of critical minerals is on the front pages these days. Current demand in the United States is approximately 2 million tons a year, and the US only produces approximately 1 million tons. There is a scarcity of copper deposits available in the United States that are yet to be developed. We're one of them. Most large copper producers use a cutoff of a minimum of 1 billion pounds to justify developing a property. Right now, we have a 43101 compliant resource of, call it 2.5 billion pounds of copper. There's 400 million tons there at approximately 0.25. Historically, Placer had calculated a resource back in the 60s of over 4 billion pounds. That resource is historic, but we can tell people that Placer did calculate a 4 billion pound resource there. The interesting thing about all this is that resource was calculated based on the average drill hole had a depth of approximately 450 feet, which in today's markets is not that deep. However, we know the copper runs at least 2,000 feet deep at this property. And how do we know that? Well, number one, in the 1920s, they mined the one Ingalls deposit down to the 1,800 foot level, and they were still running into 4 and 5% copper. And number two, 50 of the 200 holes at Moonlight were still in mineralization at the 450 foot depth where they were basically terminated. So we know the deposit is, as they say, open at depth. And we also know it is open on strike, which means the edges of the deposit go further than what has been currently defined. From a 43101 point of view, we have been able to include 2.5 billion pounds of the Placer number in a pit-constrained resource. But based on the numbers that we have put into our models, we know we have a geologic resource that is approximately 3 times that size. So is there upside in terms of the size of this deposit? Yes. The numbers have been calculated based on an average hole depth of 450 feet, and we know this thing goes at least 4 times deeper. But all of this requires more drilling in order to report a current resource that meets current standards. The resource as it stands is big enough to justify building a mine. Could we show the deposit is bigger? Yes. It will require more drilling. What we are trying to do right now is show that the deposit as it stands is economic. And that is why we're doing preliminary economic assessment on the entire property. There are very few large copper deposits that are available. I like the idea that it was in the United States because I think in the long run, most countries will want to have more security when it comes to domestic supply of critical minerals. There's copper. It's the most important mineral in the world when it comes to keeping the modern world going. It drives everything, and it makes our world better.